As our school, as the White Mountain School, part of our mission is to help our students understand how they can contribute to their communities and how they can be responsible citizens of our changing planet. It's hard to imagine a better example of this than Bill McKibben. Please join me in welcoming him.
Well, what a pleasure to get to be with you all. I'm really grateful to be here, and I'm really grateful to be in this beautiful spot. I always worry that I'm going to bore people, and it's nice to be standing in front of a good view. If you're bored, you can just watch the sunset over the mountains, and that'll be fine. I wrote the first book about global warming for a general audience 22 years ago in 1989, i.e. before you were born. And the truth is, we knew most of what we needed to know about climate change 22 years ago. We knew that when you burn coal and gas and oil, you put carbon into the atmosphere, and we knew that the molecular structure of carbon traps heat that would otherwise radiate back out to space. The only thing we didn't know was how fast this was going to pinch and how hard. And unfortunately, the story of the last 2 decades is it's pinching harder and faster than we anticipated. Partly that's because scientists are always conservative and cautious in their estimates. They tend to underestimate, not over. And second, it's because we didn't understand quite how finely balanced the planet was. That's because it had been so well balanced for the last 10,000 years, for this period of time that scientists call the Holocene, a period of climatic stability that really underwrote the rise of human civilization. The Holocene is over. It has ended in the lifetimes of people in this room, and that's because we've managed to raise the temperature dramatically already. So far, humans have raised the temperature of the Earth, globally averaged, about 1 degree. We're capturing, because of that carbon in the atmosphere, on each square meter of the Earth's surface, about 3/4 of a watt extra solar energy. Those numbers turn out to be enough to cause big change. 2010 was the warmest year for which we have records. 19 nations set new all-time temperature records last year. Some of them were amazing. We were on the phone one day with our 350.org team in Pakistan, and one of them said, "It's hot here today." And I was surprised to hear him say that, because I've been to Pakistan. It's always hot in the summer. Why would you mention it? He said, "No, it's really hot. We just set the new all-time Asia temperature record today. It's 129 degrees outside." I was like, yes, that is hot. Things will, unfortunately, get worse. The question is, how much worse? We've raised the temperature of the Earth 1 degree so far. There's another degree probably in the pipeline from carbon that we've already emitted, coal and gas and oil we've already burned. That heat is stored for a while in the oceans, but eventually it expresses itself back out to the atmosphere. So we're in for some trouble. But unless we get our act together quickly, and by getting our act together I mean get off coal and gas and oil, and far faster than any government's now planning to, we're in for probably undealable with trouble. The climatologists who predicted right everything that's happened so far are now telling us that the temperature, unless we get off coal and gas and oil real fast, will rise about 5 or 6 degrees by the time you guys are old, okay? And there is no reason to think that civilizations can deal with that. The reason that we get nowhere with climate, the reason that the UN hasn't gotten anywhere, and the reason that the American Congress has had a perfect 20-year bipartisan record of accomplishing nothing, is that the power of the fossil fuel industry is very, very large. They are the most profitable enterprise in human history by a large margin. Exxon reported its third-quarter profits last week. Exxon made more money last quarter than any company in the history of money, okay? And when you have that kind of money, it allows you to buy political influence, which they have used skillfully to prevent action from happening. We have politicians, and on one side we have climate scientists talking calmly in their ear about the biggest problem that human beings have ever faced. And on the other side, we have oil company lobbyists bellowing threats and promises in their other ear. And that's been enough to keep them from doing what needs doing. My guess is that we will never have on our side, on the kind of side of the future, that we will never have enough money to match the oil companies dollar for dollar, even close. So we better find different currencies in which to work. And that means building movements. A paper that came out in January of 2008 that's probably the most important scientific paper of the millennia so far. It came from Jim Hansen at NASA and his team. And it said, we now know enough about carbon to know how much is too much. It said, any value for carbon in the atmosphere greater than 350 parts per million is not compatible with the planet on which civilization developed and to which life on Earth is adapted. Okay, that's very strong language for scientists to use. And it's stronger still when you know that wherever you are today, the atmosphere is 393 parts per million CO2 and rising 2 parts per million per year. We're already too high. That's why, you know, Pakistan drowns and Texas burns and on and on and on. We're past where we should be and going way up. So it was a horrifying paper to read. It reminded us that we're not going to stop global warming. We're only going to make it worse than, you know, keep it from getting worse than it has to be, and that's going to have to be goal enough. But just about exactly 2 years ago, to this huge global UN climate conference in Copenhagen, okay, which was supposed to solve this problem. And we did our work pretty well. We got 117 nations to sign on to this 350 target. So we were pleased, you know. 18 months of work with a bunch of 7 college kids. We had 117 nations lined up. Unfortunately, they were the wrong 117 nations. They were all the poor ones and all the most vulnerable ones. And it was all the rich addicts led by us that just couldn't begin to grapple with this, and so the whole thing just collapsed. There was no deal. The movie didn't end the way it was supposed to, you know. It was depressing, very depressing. But happily, the young people who are sort of in the bulwark now, in the forefront of this movement now, refuse to be depressed and have gone on to build it bigger and bigger around the world. We've done 2 more of these great big global days of action. The most recent was about 4 or 5 weeks ago. And this one was focused on transportation. We called it Moving Planet. And in every country on Earth but North Korea, there were people doing amazing things, mostly with bicycles. Just couldn't have been more beautiful and powerful. We'll keep doing this stuff. We'll need your help doing it. It's really important. Education about this in a kind of active way, education that really tries to push the boundaries and make people do things, and political leaders change, is really important. It's also unlikely to be enough. And it's pretty clear that we're probably going to have to go a little harder than that. Radicals are people who work for oil companies. If you're willing to alter the composition of the atmosphere, then you're a radical. If you're willing to bring us out of the Holocene and into something else, then you're a radical. Okay? If all you want is to keep the world something like the way you were born into it, then really, frankly, you're pretty much a conservative. And that's what we are, in a sense. I can't promise you we're going to win, but I can promise you, because I've spent the last 3 or 4 years in constant motion around the Earth, spewing carbon behind me, I can promise you that all over the planet, there are people who are willing to take up this fight. A lot of them are in places that haven't caused the problem, but they're willing to help anyway and be in real solidarity with us. It's always an honor to be in rooms like that, and it's a big honor to be in this room tonight, because I know that you guys are working on this stuff, and hard. And I can't promise you we're going to win, but I can promise you that it will be a pleasure just to get to fight shoulder to shoulder with you for as long as it takes, and I'll look forward to that. Thank you all very much. Please, no need.